The recording's now started.
All right, great. So welcome everybody to this class on, we're going to be looking at the elements and modalities. It'll be the primary thing. Let's see, when ready, show my screen. Oh yes. How do I say that? Show screen, I guess. Is my screen showing now?
Mm-hmm. It's showing.
All right. Okay, so I got to pull this back up. All right, great. All right, so we're going to start by, I just want to say to everybody just one more time, and this is going to be for the benefit of the recordings in the future, is that when you come into the call to mute yourself, and you can either do that with the little green icon if you're on the web and you see the little green icon with a microphone on it, because that will give us a clean and clear recording. If people are making noise in the background, we're going to be picking up that noise and the recording will be a lot harder to listen to later. So you can mute there if you're on the web with us, and if you're on the phone, you can just use the mute button on your phone, and that will mute you until you're ready to ask a question or we're ready to have you ask questions. So that's that. Can you think of anything else we need to say, Eric, before we jump into the content?
No, nothing else, but this is a lesson 2 of the Script and Archetypes and Basic Chart Analysis course, and it will be presented by Cayelin Castell.
Oh, thanks
your
for the introduction.
Your friendly neighborhood shamanic astrologer.
Right, right. So, so the first thing I want to do is address some of the questions that came in. And also, I'm just going to kind of go through the handouts really quickly. This is just something you can print out and practice. Writing in, this is the symbol for the sun, so you write in, the different symbols. It's just a great way to practice and be able to recognize them and write them. And once you get really familiar with these symbols, then they're shorthand. So when you're taking notes, you don't have to write out, the word Virgo or Sagittarius. You can just put in the symbol, or Mars or Venus or Mercury. So that's one of the advantages, as well as being able to read a chart. Because, of course, the charts that I sent you have these symbols, and so learning to read them is really important. So practicing this, and you can just practice till you feel like you've got it, and once you, and then again, I went through the video and talked a little bit about why each symbol is what it is to help you remember what that is. So this is just something you can print out to help you remember that part, so you don't have to go back and listen to the whole video. It just kind of gives you that information on this handout. Now, this one, I actually added a note to the bottom because apparently it didn't occur to me. I actually created this handout for a live class, and you'll see here that there's the symbol for Vesta and Juno, and we put that with Virgo and Libra. And so someone was asking, why we don't use those when we're weighting the elements or the modalities. And the answer to that is that Vesta and Juno are really placeholders for Virgo and Libra. Traditional astrology places Mercury with Virgo and Venus with Libra. And that just doesn't really work or seem to fit from our perspective. So in order to sort of create the full medicine wheel, the full mandala, we've used Vesta and Juno to kind of hold the place. Now, also more recently, we've been looking at Vesta. There's a contemplation about whether to upgrade Vesta to a dwarf planet or not. And then Eric has done some brilliant research and work around Vesta. So you will see Vesta added to your chart. But we're still not using that for weighting the elements or the modalities, Vesta or Juno. And we're also not really using the nodes. And the reason is the nodes are points in space. They're not actually a planetary body. They're just a place where the moon is crossing either north or south of the ecliptic. And they do create eclipses. They're important, but they don't really carry weight in terms of an elemental energy, at least not enough to really place it in the when you're looking at what's going on for a person. If you were going to use the elements connected to the nodes, you would use the house position and the house, the element of the house where that is. But again, you know, it's kind of, it's what I wanted to do with this lesson and this piece was to just find a way so you can start to see what are the strength of your elements and modalities, because it's an understanding of the archetypes, it's an understanding of how it relates to you, and also how you can relate it to when you're reading a chart. And as you get more familiar with reading charts, there's intuitive things you can add to it or not, but just keeping it really simple in the beginning. It's really helpful. And the other question, there was another question about using the angles of the chart. And one of the reasons that I didn't include the angles of the chart is that they're also points in space. They're not really planetary energies. They're also what we're working on or what we're learning about. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's we're carrying those qualities fully until we're, you know, till we get further into our life. Also, depending on how the ascendant and midheaven work, they can be in all four of, say, the signs of the householders or the signs of self-interest or the signs of in service to spirit. For example, I'm Scorpio rising, I have a Leo midheaven, so all the angles of my chart are in the self-interest signs. Sometimes people will have, say, for example, my husband Peter has Scorpio rising like me, but he has a Virgo midheaven. So then the elements are both earth and water. And so in that case, you could maybe look at that as carrying some extra energy. And I realize that might sound a little bit confusing, so we'll do some examples, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. So let me just see. Okay, so and there's a question about what is meant by householder. We're going to talk about that when we get to that part of the presentation tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, so let me see if I can get to here we go. All right, so let's just, this blank chart, you can print out several of them and have fun with them. I really recommend going through and writing in the first house. Carries the energy of Aries, it carries the energy of Mars, it carries the energy of fire. It is also householder. And I'll tell you what, I'll again explain householder, self-interest, and in service to spirit in a moment. The second house carries the energy of Taurus, carries the energy of Venus, carries the energy of Earth, carries the energy of self-interest. And I found that if you color them, you know, and you start to see the patterns, for some reason, I don't know why, I usually make the air signs purple, but they're turquoise on this for some reason. Anyway, but you can see how they go one right after the other, and there's a pattern to them, and it's really great to get familiar with that pattern. So if you haven't filled this out yet, or you have, maybe you would want to do it again. So it's just a way to get really familiar, and you can practice using the symbols also when you're filling this out. I have some old ones. I'll take a picture of it and send it to people, and we can look at that. Okay, so when we're looking at elements, to figure out the strength of your elements, and this was a question that came up for quite a few people. So I just want to kind of go through this again. And again, as I said, I didn't include the ascendant, descendant, or midheaven IC line in this. And if you feel that's something that you really want to include, you could. But what we're trying to do is get a sense of what's the strength of elements that you have in your own chart. So for example, if whatever sign the sun is in, you would, if it's like water, you give 4 points. If it's in an air sign, you would give 4 points, depending on what it is. And if it happens to be in its own sign, so like say you had the sun in Sagittarius, you would add a point because it's in its own element. Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo are fire signs. If it happens to be in Leo, you'd add another point. So that gives it even greater strength because it's in the sign of its own energy, of its own element. You know, adding a point for its element if it's in Aries or Sagittarius, adding an extra point if it's in Leo. And the same thing with the moon. Regardless of what sign it's in, you give it 4 points. So say if you had the moon, like I have the moon in a fire sign in Sagittarius, so I give 4 points for fire. But if you had it in a water sign, you'd give it 4 points, and you'd give it an extra point for being in that water sign. So say Pisces, say you had the moon in Pisces, you could add an extra point. And if you had the moon in Cancer, you'd add yet another point. So this is how we're going through now Venus is actually earth and water, Mars is fire and air, and that can be a little bit confusing, I realize, but you can add an extra point if Venus is in either earth and water or Mars is in fire or air. And then if it's in its own sign, Venus is in Taurus or Mars is in Aries, you can add another point to that element. So this was the table that you were given to fill out, and I filled out, and then I did this in the video, I filled out one that's my chart, just to kind of give you this example. So I have the sun in Pisces, it's a water sign, so I give 4 points to water. I have the moon in Sagittarius, it's a fire sign, I give 4 points to fire. I have Mercury in Aquarius, so that's in air, so I give 4 points to air. I could actually come to think about it because it's in it's not in its own sign, but Mercury is also connected to air, so I could actually give this 5 points. And then Venus is in a fire sign, so I give 4 points. Mars is in Earth, it gets 4 points. Jupiter, now somebody asked why we don't weight Jupiter more. It is an outer planet, it's a sign for a year. So I gave it 2 points because it is really key to the understanding of what our fastest path is in current life intent. We'll be talking more about that as we go along. 2 points, and then if it's in its own element, Jupiter is fire. If it's in its own element, you add a point. If it's in its own sign, which is Sagittarius, you would add another point. I have Jupiter in Leo, so it's in fire, so I gave it 2 points for being in fire, and then I added a point because it's in its element, and so that would give it 3 points. And then the only other planet I did that was with Neptune, because Neptune is natural element as water. It most relates to Pisces. And I have Neptune in Scorpio, so I got 1 point for it being in water and another point for it being in the element of water, so that was a total of 2 points. So then you just add them up. I have 4 earth, I have 4, 5, 6, 7 water, and then 8, 11, 12, 13 fire, so I got a lot of fire, and then 4 or 5 earth, air. So that's how I filled out this chart, or my chart, so that would be an example. Somebody called, Jennifer actually was asking about her elements, and she said something about, she came up with 13 water, 10 earth, 3 air, and 3 fire, and absolutely no air. And so I went and I did her charts, I just looking at it, and she has the sun in Cancer, so she gets 4 points of water. She's got the moon in Capricorn, so 4 points for earth. She's got Mercury, Venus, and Mars all in Cancer, so 4 points for each of those. So that actually gives her a total of 16 points for water. And then Jupiter is in Taurus, which is Earth, so we give her 2 points for Earth. Saturn is in Taurus, also Earth. Saturn is connected to Earth. It's most resonant with Capricorn. So we add a point for it being in an Earth sign, so she gets 2 points for that. Uranus is in Taurus, Earth, so 1 point for that. Neptune is in Virgo, Earth, so she gets 1 point for that. And Pluto is in Fire, 1 point for that. So I don't know why she thought she got 3 points of fire, but anyway, this is what I came up with for her. So 10 points of earth, 16 points of water, 1 point of fire, and no points of air. And her question was that the lack of air doesn't match her life because in her career and personal experience, her greatest successes have been in air activities as an academic with a PhD in psychology, clinical hypnosis, a teacher, psychologist, radio presenter, workshop presenter, all of which are based on communication skills. And she's done channeling, and she's done all kinds of different things with the earth, with the what she perceives as the air element. And so one of the things I'll bring up here, and this is something that will come up more in the classes we work with Mercury, but Mercury, everybody has communication skills, mental skills, regardless of whether they have strong air in their chart or not. And I just wanted to go back to see where I got this. Yeah, I think it was, yeah, this is it. So if you have Mercury in, she has Mercury in a water sign, which is right brain feminine, and it has a lot to do with imaginative, creative, conceptual, symbolic, figurative, metaphoric skills, qualities of the right brain. But that doesn't mean that it's not communicative. It's oftentimes very imaginative and creative when it communicates, whereas if you have more left brain qualities like air and fire, then it's more rational, it's more logical, it's more organized, analytical, literal, factual, that sort of thing. So it doesn't, if you don't have air, it doesn't mean you don't have ability to communicate or the intelligence that's often associated with the air sign. The other thing to know about Jennifer is she is Aquarius rising, so she is moving towards learning those qualities of the air aspect, and apparently through many of the things that she's done, she's definitely demonstrated that. So let's see. If we, yeah, so the thing also with Jennifer is if you added, you could add Aquarius rising and give her air, one point of air, but you'd add one more point of everything else because she's got all 4 elements on the angles of her chart. So it's one of those examples where it doesn't really necessarily add more to it, and when we see the rising sign as the new mystery school, what you're here to learn about, it doesn't mean that you carry those qualities automatically with you, that those are something that's being developed. And definitely she's been developing those particular qualities. So let's see, are there any questions about that? No. So let's see. So I guess what I wanted to ask at this point is if everybody more or less understands how to figure out their elements.
Cayelin?
Yes?
Did you talk about Sherry's question?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. Yeah. But just so far, does, if anybody has any questions or there's any confusion around filling out the chart from this perspective. Now, speak now. Type in a question.
You can type or you can unmute yourselves if you're ready to ask the question.
About this part, because we're going to move on from this. So I did kind of speak to Sherry's question a little bit in looking at the handout when we looked at the this handout, the Astrological Signs and Symbols, where it's showing Vesta and Juno as connected to Virgo and Libra. And then in the chart, I think the reason she was asking this question was more connected to this particular chart when I wrote down here that there's no planet connected to Libra or Virgo. And there's not really. I mean, we connect the asteroids. Those are asteroids. And as something that Daniel and I mentioned in the first couple of classes is that really what shamanic astrology is striving to do is to use the least amount of symbols necessary to really get a comprehensive picture of why a person's here, what's their intent, what's the journey of the soul. And so we haven't really incorporated the asteroids in, because now there's something like, I don't know, 500 of them or some ridiculous number. So you could really prove any point or figure anything out using them. So we're not using them, and we're not using them to figure out the elements or the modalities. That there's that, and I realize that it's a little confusing on the handout, so I did add the note at the bottom to say that we're not using them.
Well, we could.
We do. But just saying that Sherry was asking about using Vesta and Juno and Chiron. We do definitely use Chiron, but I did not put Chiron in to weight the elements, although you could add Chiron if you wanted to do that. Because Chiron is important, and we do use it as one of the symbols of initiation, or one of the teachers or guides for our initiatory process. So go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah, not a problem. Well, I just wanted to mention that, Cayelin, you mentioned earlier that we did recently, within the last year, add Vesta, but the asteroid or dwarf planet, whatever classification they're going to call it now, that if there's anything about Vesta that we're going to do in this class, it may be maybe a short 5-minute piece of information that we'll go over in the script itself. That I'll just add, depending on where Daniel is in his teaching there. But Vesta is really doesn't apply to what we're talking about here. It doesn't really apply right now. But as you start to learn more and more about shamanic astrology, you will start to see that Vesta has some bearing on the actual shamanic astrology script itself later.
And also initiation cycles.
Yes, especially those.
Yeah, and that's something we will be covering in the timeline class. But for now, I think as we're just getting started, we need to keep it simple, so we just won't energize Vesta or Juno at this point, and especially not in figuring out the elements and the modalities. All right, so if there are no questions about the elements, I want to move on to the modalities, and just making sure everybody knows how to look at that. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask right now. If you need help figuring out what your elements are, we can do that. If you feel good with that, then we'll just move on. Or you can type in a question too. And I have everybody's chart, so if you typed in, that you're having trouble figuring it out, I can just walk everybody through that process. All right, doesn't look like there is anybody, so let's move on to the how to figure out the modalities. So let's see. So here's the blank table for figuring out the modalities. Hopefully everybody had a chance to do that. This is from my chart again, because it's, I figure I can use myself as an example because I don't have to get permission from anybody else to do that. So I'm happy to use myself. So I have Sun in Pisces, so I get 4 points for in service to spirit because it's a personal planet. Moon in Sagittarius, 4 more points for in service to spirit. And again, in the modalities, well, no, I'll just go ahead. Mercury in Aquarius, so 4 points for self-interest. Venus in Aries, 4 points for the householder. Mars in Capricorn, 4 points for householder. I will say what householder means in a moment. Jupiter in Leo, 2 points for self-interest because we give 2 points to Jupiter. To wherever Jupiter is. Saturn, 1 point in Sagittarius, Uranus, 1 point in Cancer, Neptune, 1 point in Scorpio, Pluto, 1 point in Leo. And then I did, on this one, add the angles just for those who were asking about that. You could add the angles in here. Because it actually is important. If you've got, like for me, I have all my angles are in the self-interest signs. It's because I'm Scorpio rising, so Taurus on the descendant, I have Leo on the midheaven, and Aquarius at the home and root. So those are all the signs of self-interest. So if you wanted to add points for that, you could do that. So if you didn't add the points for that, I have 8 points in self-interest. If you did add a couple of points for the fact that my angles are all in the same sign, same modality, then it would be 10 points. Now, if your angles are not in the same modality, so for example, if you were Scorpio rising with Virgo in the midheaven, then, and you were going to weight the angles, you could give 1 point to self-interest for Scorpio rising and 1 point to in service to spirit for Virgo on the midheaven. So that's, if you want to bring that in, you can do that. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I know besides the points, like what would that imply? Like what does it mean? Like mine are all in householder, all my angles. Like does that just mean, like does it mean anything really, or it's just a way to interpret it? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about that. So first of all, there's a question about what is householder. And in the video, I did talk about it. These are the signs, Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, and what am I forgetting?
Libra.
Cancer, Libra. Thank you. Yeah, so those 4 signs have a very specific function that we can call householder, or the people who live, in this reality to keep the culture going, to be the ones who are the administrators, to be the ones who are committed to relationship, to be the ones who are committed to family, to be the ones who are committed to protecting those, the things that it takes to hold a culture together. So the other words that we have used for householder is culture bearer. Now I already created all of these handouts prior to us coming up with that, or that being adopted. But it's the functions that require, that are, it's like you really have to be in the world to create, to be part of creating what it is to keep a culture moving, a family together, a relationship together, those kinds of things. So in some spiritual traditions, they have made the distinction between those who are householders, who are the ones that get married, have a family, maybe are part of running a community, the people who decide to run for office, want to be the mayor, whatever that might be. As householders, as people who are interested in householder activities. And then in service to spirit, those are the people that, Pisces, Sagittarius, particularly Virgo, and even Gemini can be what we call renunciate, or not necessarily focused on having a family, being interested in what it takes to hold the culture together, or being interested in what it takes to keep a relationship together. So, so that's the difference between those two. I hope that seems clear. Self-interest, I also like to call self-exploration. And so these are the signs that have to do with the focus on the self And if you listen to the video, I go through each one of the signs, why it is focused on the exploration of self, the experience of pleasure, Taurus, intimacy, receivership. Scorpio is about aliveness and life force energy and experiencing the greatest amount of intensity and aliveness for its own sake. Leo is about being creator and self-love and what does it take to really love oneself in a healthy way. And Aquarius is about expanding consciousness for its own sake, but it's for the person. It's not, you're not doing it in service to or for someone else. It really is from a perspective of self-interest or self-exploration. So each of these modalities, there are 4 signs in each modality that carries a certain similarity to them. So the householder signs are focused on what it takes to hold a culture together. The self-interest signs or self-exploration signs are focused on what it takes to explore aspects of self and to deepen and create a deeper experience of that. And then the service to spirit signs are in service in some way. That's their primary focus. So any other questions about that? All right, so when you figure out what the strength is, so for me, I have a lot of self-interest. I really came from a service to spirit, knowing, what your moon sign is in. So say if you had the moon in Capricorn or Cancer, that would have been a householder lineage. If it was a Scorpio moon or a Leo moon, it's a self-interest or self-exploration lineage. If it's a Sag moon, a Pisces moon, Virgo, Gemini, it's an in-service to spirit lineage. And that actually will have more weight initially in life, usually, because that's where a person's identity is located when they come into the life until they start moving towards what the intent is. So knowing what modality that's in, and then for me, for example, I had a Sagittarius moon. I also have a Pisces sun, so a lot of in service to spirit right there, right from the get-go. And I'm a Scorpio rising, so I'm moving into also including myself in that process of the experience of being in service to spirit. So this can just be really helpful to know. I mean, you can get a really quick sense if you know what these signs are when you're looking at a chart and that you see that somebody has just maybe a lot of self-interest, that can tell you something about them. If you see that maybe they have a lot of in service to spirit but they're moving towards self-interest or the other way around, that gives you information about them. And this is something that comes with practice. So if you don't understand it completely now, and as we go along and we go into all of the archetypes more deeply and we go into the script more deeply, it'll make more sense. So this is just to give you the sense of how to figure it out for yourself and then also start applying it to charts you might be looking at for other people if you're interested in learning, wanting to apply this to people you might know or clients you might have or something like that. So any questions about that part? So I see Barbara wrote in that she has a question about the weight assigned to the modalities.
I just tried unmuting myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm just a little bit confused, so maybe this is either too early or I'm confusing things. So for example, when I did my modalities table, I have 10, 7, and 9. So they're fairly similar across the board in the modalities.
Uh-huh.
So, if you end up, let's say, in this kind of a situation where all 3 are fairly even, does that just neutralize everything, or does some of this get translated later, for example, based on where your sun is and the role of the sun in the chart or where your ascendant is, that then do the modalities have more or less influence or come into play more, or because I could see if they were all lumped, more over toward the cardinal and there was very little in fixed or mutable, that would be a really strong indication. But when they're kind of spread evenly across the board like that, yeah, I'm not sure what.
Well, so I think this is something that comes with, as you deepen your understanding. The moon is going to be strong initially and can be, definitely it can kind of trump the other modalities initially until a person gets to the place where they're able to embrace more of what the modalities are for them. And so, if we look at your chart, Barbara, actually, I'm going to see if I can pull it up here real quick. Where are you? Right here. Then we see you have a Pisces moon, so you come in service, in service to spirit lineage. And you're a Virgo rising, which is also in service to spirit. So that really means that there's a strong sense there of the in service to spirit, plus you've got Mars and Pisces there as well. Venus in Aries, though, is the new emerging feminine identity, so you really are going to have to incorporate a householder piece into that as well. So having some kind of mission or purpose that you're really committed to, that you really can get yourself behind. So that means then that the householder or culture bearer energy is strong. You also have Jupiter in Libra. And I guess the self-interest is, so yourself, I would say, because your self-interest, a lot of your planets are outer planets, and the only thing that's really personal in the self-interest is Taurus, that the in service to spirit and the householder are going to be stronger for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just, the idea is to just kind of start to get a sense of how to look at this so that we know maybe what's the arena that we're working in as well. And we really work in all of them. But there can be a stronger emphasis in some places, and then there can be kind of like a balance, or it seems to be spread pretty evenly across the different modalities. And then, for sure, you're going to be working with a balance. And that can actually, I think, be an advantage. Because sometimes people can just be so, if they're so into self-interest and so focused in that realm, it may be hard for them to have any sensitivity or compassion or sense of responsibility to anything other than their own experience.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for the question. Okay. So I got a question from Ross and Diane. If there's a dearth of strength in a modality, would that indicate that this is an area where more emphasis needs to be made in one's life? That's a great question. I think that, because the other thing that can happen, and this is something that we'll talk about a little bit, there's certain cycles that will emphasize different modalities as well. Saturn cycles are definitely householder. Jupiter and Saturn cycles can be, actually Jupiter's more in service to spirit. So there's different cycles that can emphasize these. But if there's a strength in a modality, it really does suggest that there's a focus there. And how do you bring balance to that? How do you engage the other modalities, or be aware of the other modalities and activate them? We often talk about this too with the elements. Like if you're missing an element, then like there's no earth on your chart, or no air on your chart, or you just have a little bit of earth or air or water or fire or whatever it might be, then you might need to do activities that help to bring those elements into your life so that you can create more of a balance with that. If you have a lot of something, I have a lot of fire, so my challenge is to slow down, to ground, to take my time, and not to rush through things too much. So it's definitely can be a challenge. If somebody, so again, it's the same thing with the modalities. If somebody just has a lot in one modality, for example, say householder modality, and all they do, it seems like, is take care of other people, you know, are committed to projects and having to show up and be responsible all the time, and they're not really having any fun, they might need to connect with some of the other archetypes that will help them balance that out. So let's see, any other questions on this? Okay, well, let's see. Just looking to see what other questions people sent me. The main thing is that hopefully everybody's feeling comfortable, starting to get familiar with your chart by looking at the elements and the modalities as well. And I'm not seeing, let's see, wait, maybe here's the other question. The nodes, somebody was asking about the nodes, and because they seem to be important to the synthesis of the chart, why are these not included in determining the strength of the element and the modality? I guess I did touch on that because the nodes are points in space, and they don't they're not a planetary body, and those nodes are moving, and they're also in a sign for 18 months, so they're not considered as important. If you want to work with the nodes and maybe give them a modality and or a work with them, like say Barbara Arbeau's chart here, she has the north node in Scorpio and the south node in Taurus. But more importantly is the north node is in the third house, that's the Gemini house, and that house is in service to spirit. So you could add a point for another point for being in service to spirit that's coming from the lineage as well as the current life intent. And this is something we're going to talk about more as we go along in terms of, you know, how to look at the lineage, the house position, that, you know, like this is the Sagittarius job, the ninth house is Sagittarius, then the south node in the ninth house is the Sagittarius major in the Pisces mystery school. So this is definitely a lineage of in service to spirit. And then with Gemini, the north node in the Gemini house, which is also in service to spirit, and Virgo rising, we could say the new mystery school, the new major in the new mystery school is also in service to spirit. So, Bo, basically that would really, to me, say you've got a little bit more going on in the in service to spirit as a result of that. So anybody else want to look at their chart or have any other questions about this, about what we're covering? Anything about the symbols? Anything that wasn't clear? Okay, so Andrew wrote in, says, in relationships, can we find common trends in how people relate based on just the modalities? That's a great question. I haven't really looked at it from that perspective. I can tell you that looking at the elements and how, because the elements really have a lot to do with how we communicate and how we interact with each other. So I can give you a personal example, and that is that I lead with fire. I have a fire moon. I've got a lot of fire on my chart. And so I tend to move fast and to think about things and get ideas, and I'm just ready to jump on that and make that happen. My husband, Peter, has a Taurus moon, and he's got Mars in Taurus and some other Earth. He's got a lot of Earth on his chart. And so I'm always wanting to move quickly, and he's wanting to move slow. So it's been really interesting for us to realize that we have just this different style of operation, and that Earth takes time to assimilate. It takes time to digest. It takes time to, to feel into it. It also takes more time to change. It doesn't like to change fast, especially Taurus. Whereas fire is like, oh, let's get on to the next thing. Can be kind of impatient. So once we understood that, it really helped our communication and our ability to connect with one another and understand. And it's like I can have more patience and let him have his process and take the time he needs, and I can slow down a little bit, which is good. And then just recently he came up with this idea, like I'm always coming up with ideas, so he calls me the instigator. I instigate things, and he implements. So Earth is about really bringing things into form. Fire can be about inspiration and ideas and that kind of thing. So that can be really helpful. And also if you're a person who's missing elements, like I don't have a lot of Earth in my chart, so it's really helpful to be with somebody who has Earth to help remind me and to help me connect to that element. Peter doesn't have a lot of fire in his chart, so I bring that to him, and so I can help speed him up a little bit. Otherwise, it takes him a really long time to get around to making changes. So that's one of the ways to look at how people might relate. And whenever I'm doing looking at relationships between people, I will definitely look at their elements, and it's particularly where Mercury is, what element Mercury is in, because that will have a lot to do with how they might communicate with each other. So the Moon and Mercury can give you a lot of clues about that and the element. So in modalities, we could definitely say, Andrew, this it particularly on what is a person's rising sign. So if you have somebody who's in service to spirit, say Virgo rising, Pisces rising, even Sag or Gemini, their intention for relationship is a lot different than it would be for somebody who's, say, Libra rising or Cancer rising. So if you understand what those differences are, one might be more interested in, like in service to spirit will be more interested in their sacred work and how they can be of service. The other might be more interested in raising a family and doing householder kinds of things. If somebody has a lot of self-interest, they maybe are not as interested in relationship from, say, the Libra perspective or from the perspective of sensitivity and compassion, but rather how does the experience of relationship allow them to know more about themselves or have a deeper experience of themselves. So there's lots of different ways that we can look at this, and I think it's practice. As you practice and you start to look at it, you see, oh wow, this person has a lot of householder, or this person has a lot of in service to spirit. It can definitely give you a sense of what their style of operation might be in the world. So any other questions? And you can again unmute yourself, or you can type in a question. Yeah, let me see if I can. Eric's asking if I can bring up a summary of the modalities. Something like this, Eric, is this what you were talking about?
No, something that just has the blocks of the modalities, and maybe like a one-sentence definition of them. I mean, that could work too, but
okay.
something that has a little more descriptor, just for the video, but also for the folks that are watching right now, just to kind of get their eye on that.
Let me see what I can find here, because I've had, I don't remember what we gave in the modalities.
I think I have a handout that is part of the course. That's just the modalities.
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to see if I could find it. That's not it. Let me see. I have several. It's just finding them. So, let's see. Okay. Maybe I can just find one.
I thought you just looked like, yeah.
Elements and modalities.
It's probably
Elements that go down a little further. I have that's elements. Modality. Oh, I have cards for the modalities. Nope, that's not what I want.
Let's look at the cards.
All right. This is basically kind of what was part of the video that I created. And these I just actually created a floor presentation out of them too, so I could use them when I didn't have a PowerPoint. So basically, this is householder. This is old, so it doesn't have culture bearer on here, but they mark the solstices. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. They mark the solstices and equinoxes, so they're beginning the season. They initiate action. Their energy is moving out towards something new. They're enterprising. They like to begin things. They are purposeful and moving the direction, energy in a defined direction. But not always so great at completing things. So they like to initiate and start things, the householders, but aren't always as aren't as good at seeing things through. Not that they don't, but sometimes that's one of the things that's known about people that have a lot of these particular archetypes on their chart. And then we look at each of them as an expert. Capricorn is the community expert, the elder, the wise one, the organizer, the responsible administrator, the one who is going to be the mayor of the town, the tribal leader, part of the council of elders, somebody who will take a leading role in what it takes to administrate or to manage a tribe, a community, a domain. So that's why we call them the community expert. Whereas Cancer is the family expert, and they're going to take responsibility for whether it's children or projects or something that they can feel like they can nourish and nurture and take care of until it reaches maturity. So they're the family experts. Aries are the expert protectors of the family and the community. So they will fight for, defend, and protect those who are raising the children and helping to run the community. And then Libra they're the relationship experts. So they're responsible relators, and they are also interested in peace, being peace bearers. So that begins the season, and then the self-interest signs, or the signs about self-exploration, are the center. It's like once the season has started, they're kind of the place where it's the center point of that seasonal energy. So sometimes also called fixed signs, but the problem with that term is that people often think fixed means stuck. And so we're not talking about stuck. We're talking about very focused. There's an energy that's in motion, that's at play, that's moving in that seasonal energy, and so you can just really ride that that energy, and it's moving inward. Okay, and it's also connected, of course, to the seasons of the cross quarter. February cross quarter is Imbolc. The May cross quarter is Beltane. The cross quarter we just are in right now is Samhain, and then Lammas is the August cross quarter. So this is, that focused determination. It's very much a stabilizing force, and they can have a single-minded pursuit of a goal if there's a lot of self-interest signs, strongly directed personal will. So this is how they're knowing themselves. Aquarius knows self through gaining cosmic consciousness or objective awareness, and is all about the experience of consciousness for its own sake. So if we're going to add in, that is a phrase that we've been adding in recent last couple of years or so. Leo is knowing themselves through the development of self-confidence, self-love, self-approval, self-acceptance, getting their God, and that they are creator, making it up as they go along for its own sake, the process of being the creator. Taurus knows themselves through the experience of pleasure and beauty and intimacy for its own sake, what it means to really be in the physical body, earth sign. So each of these, Leo is fire, Aquarius is air, Taurus is earth, Scorpio is water. So each modality has an element. And so the element adds a different quality to that sign and the modality. So if we understand the elements and the modalities, it gives us a way of bringing deeper meaning into each of these signs. So that's why it's useful to learn this part. Scorpio is knowing itself through personal power, generating life force, the experience of will and aliveness for its own sake. Another way to look at Scorpio. Then we have the in-service to spirit signs, or the mutable signs, and these are the signs that come before an equinox or a solstice. So they're always at the end of the seasonal energy, or that time when things are shape-shifting into something else. So that's the ending of the season, and the energy is moving in and out, and it's connecting the householders' outward energy to the inner energy of that self-exploration, and then is adapting to create something new, and that's in service to spirit. So this is an energy that's very versatile, flexible. They have the ability to change, move, and change if needed. They're connecting, they're linking, and they are always in the process of being in service, asking how they can be of service to spirit. So Gemini is serving spirit by being the trickster, the one who brings in the humor and the fun and the magic and the stories, making it more playful, and not letting us get too serious, not taking ourselves too seriously. Sagittarius is on the quest for truth and enlightenment, and we could say Gemini and Sagittarius are on a resonant polarity, but Sagittarius tends to be far more serious than Gemini. Gemini is really into the humor and play, whereas Sagittarius is very committed and dedicated to that quest for truth and meaning, whatever that might be, and for also for enlightenment. Pisces is in service to spirit through compassionate, selfless service, and is asking, how can I help and heal? That's what Pisces is really here for. And Virgo is in dedication to their sacred function or their sacred work, creating sacred space, honoring all life as sacred. And so Pisces and Virgo are definitely a resonant polarity, as they are earth and water. Virgo's a little more grounded and is more interested in the sacred work, isn't as sensitive as Pisces is a water sign, so it has that ability to sense into and feel what other people feel and to be in service that way. Somebody's asking if I can send this a chart to people. I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can maybe I think I actually have it in like a handout, or like a one-page handout. So I'll see what I can do and make that available to everybody. It's also, if you go back and listen to the video on the modalities, everything I said here and more is in that video, talking about each of the signs and how they're, well, the elements one goes into how each sign is representative of that element, and the modalities video goes into how each sign is representative of that modality. So, so yeah, I can send this out to people. Any other questions? Again, you can unmute your line or you can type in a question. I think I have caught everybody. Well, we have a little bit more time, and I'm happy to answer questions, personal questions about your own chart, about the elements, about the modalities, any questions about the symbols. And this actually, here's a chart that is in your handout that shows how each sign, Capricorn is earth and feminine. Earth signs are feminine. Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo are the earth signs. Householder signs are Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, Libra. This is a way so you can see how they all line up. Taurus is self-interest, earth. Leo is self-interest, but it's fire. And, Scorpio is self-interest, but it's water. And Aquarius is self-interest, but it's air. So each of these archetypes, and then of course Virgo is earth, Sagittarius is fire, Pisces is water, Gemini is air, and these are all the in service to spirit signs. This is going to be really helpful for you to have this breakdown of how the elements and modalities, but especially the modalities, when we get to the place where we're going to be looking at how to figure out what's the relationship between planets. So for example, if you have Venus in Aries and Mars in Capricorn, you know they're in a dynamic relationship to each other. Any planets in their sign of their modality is going to have a dynamic relationship with other planets in those signs, and that's going to help when we get to the place where we're figuring out what our how to read the chart, how to understand how these different things might talk to each other. And even though, for example, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo are all earth signs, they are operating in a different modality. They have a different function or different way of operating, and so they don't necessarily have an easy conversation. They can have an easy conversation from the perspective of Earth, but from the perspective of self-interest, say Taurus may not really understand Virgo and Capricorn, or Virgo and Capricorn may not really understand Taurus because they don't. Virgo and Capricorn are both actually into being givers and to work, and to Capricorn is serving the community and being a leader. Virgo is in service through the sacred work, and Taurus is not really. It's into like, how can I be in the moment and enjoy what's going on? So it just is another way to understand some of the differences. So I'm just checking to see if there's any other questions that came in while I was talking about that. Nope. So
what about, Cayelin, what about, I think we've probably already mentioned it, the modalities as a seasonal experience, like the signs are, getting the essence of that point of the season and what it energetically, what that means.
Yeah, so we I think I did go into this in the video and just a little bit tonight, but for example, Capricorn being the winter solstice point, and it's the longest night and the shortest day, so it's the deepest descent of spirit into matter, earth. It's like a seed point for the whole solar cycle of the year. When we think of it from the perspective of the winter solstice. Now, of course, and that's reminds me of another question that came in. Is if we're in the northern hemisphere, it's the winter solstice, but if we're in the southern hemisphere, it's actually the summer solstice. So we often refer to it as the December solstice because it depends on which hemisphere you happen to be in, what seasonal experience you have. And sometimes this can be confusing. And Jennifer, who's in South Africa, she's south of the equator, so she's having a different seasonal experience than we are. And so we've pondered this in shamanic astrology. It's like our understanding of the signs is based on our experience. Our understanding of the planets in the signs and in the different seasons is based on our experience of the seasons as we experience them. So if we were in the southern hemisphere, what would the experience be? It might be completely different. But also, the seeds of summer are in the time of winter, and the seeds of winter are in the time of summer. They're a resonant polarity. So if we think of 0 Cancer as the summer solstice point, it's also water. So we have the solstices in earth and water, and so they're operating in that feminine energy, and then the equinoxes are fire and air, operating in the masculine energy. And what's interesting is that at the solstices, we're either having the longest day and the shortest night, or the shortest day and the longest night. So, and the opposite season is the opposite experience. But at the equinoxes, we are having the balance of day and night, the same number of hours of daylight as the same number of hours of night. And so, but one is going towards longer days. The spring equinox is going towards longer days, and the autumnal equinox is going toward shorter days. So at that balance point, then, either quickly the days are going to get longer if you're at the spring equinox, or quickly the days are going to get shorter if you're at the autumnal equinox. And these energies are kind of in each other. So, and it seems to be, from our experience, that our understanding of the signs based on the seasonal experience that we have in the northern hemisphere kind of works in the southern hemisphere too. But to really, really know, we would need to spend time there and to have the direct experience. And I personally have not done that, and then I don't know of anybody who does, but this is part of research, I think, going forward, to look at what the seasonal signs, would we have a little bit different understanding of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere? Just a question to be with. We don't know. So any other questions?
Looks like Andrew's got one.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, so he's saying, does it make a difference whether the modality is square, conjunct, or trine its house? For example, mine with Capricorn rising would be square, as Capricorn and Aries first house square each other. So I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding that question, but I'm going to pull up your chart, Andrew, and that might help us a little better here. So we see your Capricorn rising. And we're not going to bring, I guess the thing to know is that we're not really bringing in the modalities of the houses so much right now. And anybody's rising sign, regardless of what it is always going to be in the first house, and that is the house that we associate with Aries. So it's always going to be connected to that. If I'm not really answering your question, type in some more, because I'm not sure I totally understand it. So if we look at your chart, we do see there's the Libra moon, so there's this householder, and then a lot of Capricorn, a lot of householder there. But Mars in Gemini, which is in service to spirit, opposite Mercury in Sagittarius, also in service to spirit, and then quite a bit of self-interest. And this is an example of somebody who has an ascendant in Capricorn and a midheaven in Scorpio. So earth and water, it's not all four elements are represented by the angles of the chart. There's only two elements being represented. So you have earth on the ascendant, and you have earth at the IC, Taurus here. You have water on the midheaven, and you have water on the descendant, Scorpio and Cancer. So that would bring, would suggest that perhaps those elements are a little bit stronger. And they're really strong because you have lots of planets in both earth and water as well. So let's see. So with earth in fire, okay, so he's saying, so with earth and fire, Capricorn rising, for example, what difference does that make to Aries rising? So again, we're not really looking at, and everybody's rising sign is going to fall into the first house, because that's what's coming up over the eastern horizon when a person is born, and that has to do with personal identity. The Aries mystery school is connected to personal identity and how we're showing up, so that it's really not adding fire to the rising sign, have it in the first house, because everybody's rising sign is in the first house. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so any other questions? And again, people can unmute themselves or type in the chat. Or come on the video. If you click the little green box with the microphone, that will, if it's got a red line through it, that'll unmute you. And if you have your box with the little video camera, you can click that, and that will bring you up so we can all see who's asking the question if you want to be seen.
I think we are, I don't think anybody's asking a question here.
I don't think so either. So I think we've kind of recovered everything that we did in the videos, and we've looked at a couple of charts, and we've answered some questions. So if there aren't any more questions, we might be complete. So here's your last chance. Ask a question.
Well, there'll be lessons 3A and 3B to ask Cayelin. So you'll get more opportunities. And of course, we do have the forum available when you log into the ShamanicaStrology.com website. There is a forum that's exclusive only to the students of the Shamanic Astrology online course. And feel free to ask your questions there as well. Cayelin and I check it at least once a day, so you can ask those.
And you can also post comments, insights, ahas, start a dialogue. If you have, maybe want to connect more around a certain topic, you can start a thread around a topic. And definitely take advantage of the forum, because it's a great way to learn more. Also, for the next class, we're going to be looking at the houses and the chart as a map. And I think the videos, are they on one page now, Eric, for people to watch?
Yeah, the classes for 3A and 3B are broken into 2 pages, but the videos are all there, all posted and available for watching.
And there's some, and so in the handouts too, let me just show you, because I can do that, haha. What you're going to be filling out, first of all, one of the things you're going to be doing is taking this blank chart, and actually it shouldn't have Aries here. I should have one. I'm going to have to work on that and create one that doesn't have any symbols in the center here, because you're going to be drawing up your own chart and placing the planets and putting in the angles and just drawing it out. And it's a great way to get more familiar with your own chart. And even if you're familiar with it, it's still a good kind of way to deepen it. I've done it many times, and I always I think it imprints it more fully into your being to go through that practice. So one of the videos is for you to draw up your chart, and then I don't know if I can't remember. I don't think we're doing planetary complexes. I think that's
for
video.
the timeline.
Yeah. So I think the main exercise you'll have in the next video is to draw up your own chart. And so you can print this out. You can cross out these. I'll see if I can. I don't know if I can create one without symbols there.
I think, Cayelin, I believe I have one that I can. Yeah, because I did a basic 101 astrology class last year, and I created one just so people can draw.
Yeah, usually what I've done is I've just covered them up and printed them off, and I didn't think about that when I was creating this slide. So if you have one, that'd be great, and otherwise I can create one that I can just block these out.
I'll email you that.
All right, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So if you have any challenges with or questions or anything that comes up while you're learning how to draw up your chart, then you can email me, and we will definitely be going through this on the Q&A on December 1st is when we'll have our next class. And so I highly encourage everybody to watch those videos and do those exercises so that if you have questions or it's not clear, then we can take care of that when we're doing the live Q&A. So anything else, anybody? Oh, Andrew, you're welcome. Thank you. And yes, thank you, Ross and Diane. So I guess we're done until we meet again in a couple of, actually like 3 weeks. So you have plenty of time to watch your videos and draw up your chart and email me or get on the forum or do both if you need to.
Cayelin, you can switch the screen back to me.
Change presenter? Is that what I do? Okay. To Eric.
There we go.
Yes. All right. Excellent.
All right. So everyone, all right, well, thank you all for attending, and our next course, our class, lesson 3A will be December 1st at the same time, 5 p.m. Pacific time, and we look forward to having you all there.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.